Welcome to Launch Today, the podcast focused on what it takes to get your business to $1 million in revenue. From marketing tactics to incredible guest interviews, we focus on sharing behind-the-scenes insights from masters in their field. If you want to grow your revenue for your startup or business, you don't want to miss today because Carl has co-founded, worked with, and coached companies that have raised tens of millions of dollars of revenue and worked with companies equating up to $10 billion in kind of portfolio value, and partnership deals have been a tremendous part of how he built and grew this. So be sure to check this out because Carl is going to teach us all about partnerships and strategy today. Welcome, Carl Schlegel, managing partner of Renovo Global, co-founder of $1 Million Decks, advisory board member out of several companies, TMI venture partner, master networker, and incredible partnership master craftsman. I wrote those last two. That's not Carl blowing himself up. Carl has co-founded, worked with, and coached companies, a big portfolio like I mentioned, and we've known each other for like a year and change now. I've seen the effects of what he does for companies where he helps them kind of hockey stick up. If you want to know about how to grow a business through more than just marketing, although of course I think marketing is pretty important too, this is the show for you. So we're going to dive right into this. And I think let's just begin with, why do you do what you do, Carl? How do you get here?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Trevor. First of all, thanks so much for having me as a guest on the show. Really excited to be here today and speak with everybody. Why do I do what I do? It's something my father told me at a young age. He said, life is all about people. Life is all about relationships. He said, if you want to take a look at great companies, it's not the technology, it's not the IP, it's not the real estate or the assets that build great companies. It's people coming together and uniting that build great companies. And people also move civilization forward. And he said, if you can't find the right types of people, then literally go to the streets, go to other places. Each person, whether they contribute to GDP directly or not, has human dignity, has value, has gifts to share, and a story to be able to tell. And that really had a major impact on me. And so when I was taking a look at the whole equation of business, life, relationships, and then seeing that business was a subset of life, business was about relationships. Relationships took time to cultivate trust and to be able to really be able to build into a foundation where you could accomplish things. I also thought, wow, there's a certain limited time horizon here. And how can you be able to get the most out of life? And how could you have fun while doing it along the way? So that really led me into, if it's all about people, then connecting businesses or connecting with the right people where there's the right exchange of value, not just take, but an exchange of value, you could both get what you were seeking, could both be able to live really fulfilled lives, and it could transform things where you weren't taking a look at linear growth, you were taking a look at exponential growth or even pushing the boundaries of possibility. So that's really what got me into it, Trevor.
That's pretty awesome. I love you're a people person, and anybody who knows me knows I'm like a problem and a strategy person, and people are like, I know that they're part of the equation, but it's not what drives me. I always love people like you who've got such a different mind because I think it shows there's not just one path to success. I agree people are always going to be important as much as I can mind them in my head, but knowing folks like you and other folks I know who are just connected, it's always so cool. You were speaking theoretically about businesses and partnerships and the power of people. Give me a client story that really illustrates like something awesome you got to do with a client at some point.
Yeah. So again, back to those relationships, when you've built the trust and you've been in the trenches, then all of a sudden you get those wonderful phone calls that say, I didn't know who else to call, but I've got this amazing opportunity. In this case, there was an opportunity to take a company that was formed in the 1960s, supplying governments and militaries since the 60s, and be able to restructure that company, bring in some new talent, bring in some additional resources. And the fact that the company already had the export licenses also factored into a value proposition, right, for that restructuring. So someone that I served on a board with, I brought in, we had some conversations, and this opportunity was brought to me by a mentor who had taken 4 companies to $1 million, helped another 60 hit another million. But interestingly enough, when you talk about the relationships and how relationships cut across different sectors, here's someone from IT, right, who's speaking to me about this type of opportunity. And ironically, bringing in somebody who restructured, turned around the State Department and other things from a technical standpoint, but then also had the military service track record, et cetera. when you put those together, there was a lot of common ground that was found. And that's a perfect example of something you wouldn't normally, just by scouring LinkedIn, find and say, here's a match, here's how we put this together. So that was a pretty exciting opportunity. One other I want to share is in 2020, we took an end to end power over Ethernet LED system, right? Instead of Frankensteining the different parts, being able to have something end to end that really functioned, and we paired it together with smart cities that were private equity backed overseas. And there was a $250 million deal that was actually signed as a result of that. So again, the ability to move that exponential growth and being just open to where that exchange of value could really be makes it really exciting. And I love what I do.
That's pretty awesome. Those are both really cool stories of, yeah, I agree. At some point, when you know somebody who can do a very particular thing, and you say, great, I now have the problem that this fits into. And you're not going to make a job post and find the person who can fit together a whole $250 million deal for a power over Ethernet LED company. Like, you're not going to find them. You have to know them. I agree. That's pretty awesome. All right. Obviously, working with these POE guys, working with anybody you've worked with in the past, right? You work with a lot of smaller companies, help them grow
Yes, I
big.
do.
A lot of founders are going to make the same mistake about partnership. I can think of a few mistakes I've made in the past. But what are ones that you see that you think anybody who's listening, they're thinking about partnership, what should they avoid?
I think the first thing to take a look at, Trevor, is that it really is about the people. If you can't get along with that person, it doesn't matter how good the quote unquote deal is going to be. It's going to be like the band that's coming together and then all of a sudden hits it big and then has the breakup and fall apart. So I think having the authenticity, the respect for the other person, and also the respect for oneself to be upfront about certain things, things like values and seeing if you actually see eye to eye are also important. I think the other side of it is that a lot of times partnerships are seen as an extension of sales, and the way I take a look at partnerships, I take a look at the strategic business development aspects. What's necessary to grow a business? So there's revenue partnerships, there's capacity partnerships, there's positioning partnerships, there's technology partnerships, right? So it's not just a one size fits all, and it doesn't just go into, hey, I want to take from the stream where all the fish are swimming. The analogy that I like to say is you can go and put your line in the stream, you know that the fish are there and you can catch what you can catch. Or you can go and become friends with the person who controls the dam, come up with the win-win value proposition and get all the fish that you need, right? But it's the win-win value proposition. I think a lot of people make the mistake of not thinking of from the other side. What can I share? What can I trade? What is of value to the other person when they're looking at the strategic partnerships? So I'd say that's probably the first thing. The second thing is limiting it only to revenue. With a company that I was fortunate to be part of, which we took Inc. 500, 180 South Group back in 2015, we also put partnerships together that got us into facilities, right? That gave us more access to other types of resources, including our office space, by being able to be creative in understanding how one company needed a certain service. We were able to provide that service. By being in the space, we were able to enhance and be able to drive more awareness around certain things. So I think it's not just that sales side of it and it's not just revenue, but when you really think about that exchange of value and you think about what's in it for the other person as much as what's in it for you, or even more, it really allows you to win when it comes to partnerships as a hyper growth accelerator for your business.
Excellent. I definitely agree. I've seen a lot of people approach partnerships as a give, give me. What am I giving you? It doesn't matter. I came here to take.
Right.
And I think that is, and in fairness, I have run some partnerships that way in the past, and they're not generally long-term beneficial. I think that is the problem you can reach is you think, hey, what gets me money in 45 or 60 or 180 days? That. And then you miss out on, like you mentioned, there's a guy who controls the whole dam. That's 10 years of revenue if you play it right. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Awesome. So I think you covered some of what people misunderstand about partnership. What are some things that you would say to an early stage founder? Right? Because I know you also coach people all the time.
Yeah.
I'm looking at a partnership. We get along well enough. What's what are the things that you always want to see a partnership bring for Obviously, you're partnering probably with a larger company. What do you want to see to help make sure that the power imbalance here is going to still be a survivable thing for the smaller company?
I think a lot comes down in the contracts. So the legal agreements. Sometimes people think, oh, because I'm paying you a commission, right, then I'm doing you a favor. And sometimes they take a look at it as what's coming out of my pocket as opposed to, hey, that's 80 to 90% more revenue or whatever the split is, right? That's coming into my pocket. So I think the right respect for that is important. I think it's also important to be able to set goals and to be able to take a look not at deadlines, but in going back to what's in it for each person, not just take a look at, okay, what's the revenue target? What's the business? What's the personal motivation? Why would you take of your time to actually get involved and to be able to open up doors in this area, let's say, or to enter into this exchange of value? What is it that you're trying to accomplish for yourself, for your family? What are the personal motivations that are leading you to do this? And when you understand that, now all of a sudden you can come to an alignment where you've got the partnership creates a momentum, right? There's a physics that takes place, right? An object at rest tends to stay at rest unless acted upon by an equal and opposite force, right?
Yep.
And when you actually take a look at physics and you take a look at things and the momentum that gets created, there's a natural way in which things then tend to accelerate. And instead of just pushing or pulling from one side, that there's this cycle and each side is pushing each other forward in a very positive way, not in a controlling, demanding, report to me type of way, but it takes on a life of its own. And all of a sudden, when you get that in sync and you get that in flow, it moves to a whole new level. I saw that personally, and also having the benefit of a coach that I worked with, which led to that $250 million deal that got signed between the Smart City, because that coach, who was part of the team over at Eco Enterprise, took the time to be able to work with me and say, "Hey, Carl, what's your time looking like? What's your motivation? Why are you even doing this? Why do you want to provide for your family? Is it that you want that sports car? What is the thing that's really driving you, right?" And then being able to block out the time. And when those two things happened, we actually exceeded the original goals and the attribute that were really set. So I think going in, you need a plan around the partnership. And you also have to be realistic that you can't just don't have an unlimited amount of time or resources. So you have energy that's also going in, right? Personal energy is going into this. So you want that energy to flow in a constructive way. And part of the way in which you take a look at the energy flow is also saying, "Hey, am I getting excited, enthusiastic by what's actually taking place here? Am I seeing it as a driver? And do I have the right expectations?" Because if you're an early stage company and you're looking at $1 million deals, but it's going to have a nine month time frame, do you really have the luxury to go and pursue that type of opportunity? So at different stages, whether you're a startup or whether you're a more mature company or whether you're a scale up, there are different goals that you want and ways to structure the partnership. And I actually have a cognitive digital twin that I've been working with a company on that will be released soon, which is going to incorporate some of these different ways and lessons and things that I've learned over the years about strategic
Oh,
partnerships.
interesting. So we can query RoboCarl.
Yeah, yeah. It'll be in a rentable AI marketplace. But
Awesome. I did a little bit of advisory work with a company in that space maybe a year or two ago. I think before GPT-3 really blew things up. And it is a super interesting space to be able to say,
it
hey, let me
is.
put my brain into a computer and then I ask it questions and sometimes I'm like, that's interesting. I don't know. I would have thought of that.
But what was fascinating to me about the team that I worked with, or I am working with, is that their process really gets to a subconscious level because it gets beyond the surface level queries and it actually forces you to really think about what do you think about when you think about X is one of the types of questions, right? And the premise. And that opens up so much. So I learned so much about myself
Wow.
in the process. And I see it as a way also, this conversation about AI versus humanity or AI with humanity, et cetera. I think that this is one of those areas where you start reinserting the humanity back into the matrix, if you will, through that. One other thing I wanted to just mention, just going back to that question, being on the other side of pitch competitions or working with accelerators, et cetera, venture studios, I often see the slide that everybody gets to about what's the market going to be and what's that service obtainable market, what's the TAM, the SAM, the SOM, right? And I think right there, the investors are really seeking to understand, not just do you understand the metrics in a market, but are you able to access that market? So when you talk about accessibility to a market, I'll stop people and I'll say, okay, great. That's awesome. So how are you getting those customers? And they'll say things like, oh, we're going to do marketing. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And one of the things I love about what you do, Trevor, is that you validate what that market is actually going to look like. So what I try to get them to think about is, if you looked at strategic partnerships and relationships as a mechanism by which you could create tangibility around the ability to access those markets, what does that look like? And then when looking at the capital equation, what does that represent in terms of revenue? So demand minus the capital that you actually need equals the ROI back to the investor in X amount of time. And if you're at the VC level, you have to think equals 10x back to the investor in a certain amount of time. So I think strategic partnerships can also be a very powerful tool that allows you to quantify, to qualify, and to really get the traction that's going to make sense where the investor then says, this is a no-brainer.
Definitely. I think, especially, it seemed like partnerships are only a B2B thing. And I think it's important
Right.
to consider that when you do partnerships right, it can actually be tremendously powerful B2C as well, because you do a communication with another business to get access to consumers. And that's one that I do a lot of mentoring on startups. And I've seen a fair number of startups on the B2B side saying, oh, we've got this advisor with this Rolodex. It'll be great. I think too
Right.
many B2C startups or D2C startups are just like, we're going to spend money and then make money. And I'm like, that works. That's what I do. That works. But it's also, that's real hard to scale up past a couple million. And how,
Trevor, when you said that, it just brought me back to early on in my career when I was in venture
yeah,
capital. And I worked with this, what it through acquisition had then become the first HIPAA compliant platform for the online exchange of electronic medical records. And part of what I was doing for the company was a blog outreach program. I was doing some stuff in investor relations. But by reaching out to then the person who was in charge of Microsoft Health Vault, who had a blog, right? And I shared with him what we were doing, that literally led to a partnership with Microsoft Health Vault
there you go.
and that company. But again, seeing, listening, tying in, we also got onto MedGadget, which was one of the top 15 blogs. It later rose to a higher level. But again, it was, I think there's also the aspect of being interesting, being unique, not just playing from a competitive mindset, but really harnessing that creativity. Peter Thiel talks about a lot of that in his book, 0 to 1. But The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles, written at the turn of the century back in the
Wow. Yeah.
1900s, even speaks to that. Don't go and follow the rest. Don't focus on the competitive mindset. Focus on the creative. What makes you unique? Why is it that you're able to serve better than others, etc.? Not about putting them down, but just really understanding your purpose, how you can show up, how you can provide value in the equation. I think is really, really powerful.
Awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. So we've talked a lot about partnerships because you're partnership
Sure.
master craftsman, I mentioned. You also do a big chunk of strategy, which is, of course, is tiered
Yes.
with partnership. If I'm new business, got a little traction, whatever, what do you advise a CEO to think of as like the big strategic pieces to take a
Mm.
business that they know could grow and actually help it to do so?
So I have an exercise that I won't say is just my own. Other people have written about this, but when I discovered it, I said, wow, I naturally do this. I used to get teased because of the amount of paper napkins that I would pick at restaurants or at different places, right? I'd always have paper napkins. So
That's a
then
very
my now,
dad thing. Like every dad I
yeah,
know
it must
has a
be a dad
pocket
thing.
full of them.
Yeah, having 5 kids, etc. It must be the dad thing. So my wife was teasing me, and then she had a dance initiative, and she had a business partner, and I sat down with them in a Dunkin' Donuts. I said, "Where's the napkin?" And then on the napkin, so it's something I call paper napkin business planning, right? Where you have to take your model and put it on the paper napkin. That can be so powerful because you don't have slides and slides and slides and slides and big mural boards, but you have, here's what we provide, right? Here's where we want to get to, and then how are we able to actually do that? And taking a look at that gap analysis, even though it might just look like three circles, can be very, very powerful in saying, where do you want to get there? The other thing that I find, a mentor of mine taught me this. He said, Carl, I want you to imagine you've just stepped off stage, you've won the Grammys, the Oscars, the Emmys. And I want you to close your eyes and I want you to picture this. What's going on in the crowd, what's in the air around you, how are you feeling internally? And he was able to emotionally anchor me to this moment and then start working backwards and saying, what did you do to get there? And I think that can be so freeing from the P&Ls, from the projections forward that are taking a look at previous performance or history, trying to predict the future, where we end up looking to the past, to the future. And in some cases, you take a look at artificial intelligence today, we're doing certain things. Okay, what are the patterns of the past to be able to take a look to the future? That's why I think the cognitive digital twins and other components that really say what's the present forward look like, or what's the future backward looking, that can be really powerful and free up a CEO at a company or a team of founders to be able to remember what it's like to have that vision, to dreamstorm. Something we did in an exercise at the venture studio, a consultant to the other day, where we did dreamstorming. It's a thing that comes from Matthew Kelly, but dreamstorming, right? And being able to take a look at that future possibility, work backwards, have the clarity. And now all of a sudden, you're not looking at things from a one-dimensional or two-dimensional view. It's like playing 3D chess in a 2D world.
Interesting. I do the simplicity of let's have a paper napkin. I do like the simplicity of let's have a paper napkin. Let's write down in 2 or 3 sentences, this is it. Because that's your guiding document. You frame it, you put it up on the wall. Are we doing this? If not, why?
Yeah.
Awesome.
It,
So right now, obviously, you're a busy man, Carl. You and I have talked more than a few times about that. What inspires you? What wakes you up? What makes you go, all right, today is another great day. We're going to do, what is it?
I've always loved challenging the boundaries of possibility and just rethinking those. And from Star Trek, which was a major influence on me, and the space narrative, to yes, from and the other side of things is when I wake up and the people that I work with, and I'm fortunate to work with amazing teams of people, and then seeing what's exciting to them, what are the goals that they're looking to accomplish. But at the end of the day, I really enjoy helping people. It really comes from a place of seeking to help people and to be able to make things happen. And I love experiencing life to the fullest. So I'm a violinist. I play in a hip hop reggae band, a classically trained violinist. But again,
That's awesome.
this is where that rebel, I used to describe myself as a brand and business rebel. And then I played in a band called Universal Rebel. Now I'm in a band called the Dopifiers. So we dopify that sound with a good friend of mine named Blindman. But so music is also something else that really inspires me. It's a universal language. People know exactly what they like within 2 seconds of hearing it. Do I like this? Do I want to do that? At the same time, so it's a personal thing. At the same time, you have this universality and this way in which sound and music really connects and brings people together. And so what gets me out of bed is the possibility, the excitement. I love surprises. And so not knowing necessarily what's going to come next can mean that you're getting out of bed in the morning and all of a sudden you're having a conversation with someone on the other side of the globe about launching rockets into space, literally. Or you could be talking with somebody about a cure for cancer on a nano level, right? Or you could be speaking with someone who says, hey, I've got this nonprofit organization or this idea of how to get the nonprofit organizations more of the money and the resources they need because of being able to connect to the people and the causes that they care about. The other thing, my children. I love my children. I love my wife. And when I take a step back, I'm just fascinated by the way that they actually grow. Life takes place, right? They are thinking human beings. Sometimes I might not want them to talk back to me, but that's actually a sign that they're processing, right? They're making their own decisions. Life itself is really the thing that makes me come alive, and the possibilities of what could be happening next.
That's big thinking. And you got 5 kids, right?
I've got 5
Got five
kids,
kids,
yeah.
yeah, which is man, I've got
2 girls and
3,
2
and
boys.
I'm actually only 22. No, that's not true. But all right, I guess so. Out of the strictly business, what's a book you read that you liked recently?
So I have really enjoyed the book Burn the Boats by Matt Higgins. So Matt Higgins has RSC Ventures. Matt Higgins is a shark on a Shark Tank, has been a shark on Shark Tank. But what I loved about the book was take away all the rest of the celebrity, etc. It was the fact that it was so authentic and it spoke about following your instincts. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be concerned. Do I actually belong here, etc. And he gives a way of taking a look at burning the boats, not as you're just limiting yourself to one option, but you're opening yourself up to the right options in front of you. But if you're looking backwards, you can't afford to put your focus and your energy in moving forward. And so I love that it wasn't just, hey, this is what Caesar did to motivate the troops, burn the boats. Yes, there's that reference in there. However, what it's really about is getting yourself engaged internally and focused on where you can go and then how you can work with people to be able to get there. And so I also appreciated the stories that he shared personally, the stories from others that were able to share. I felt as though you could relate a lot more, and I've even had some exchange back and forth with him since reading the book, even giving him some feedback on it, which I've appreciated. It's not every day that you're able to converse with the author, and yet he's been very generous in accepting and genuinely seeking out that type of feedback. So Burn the Boats is a book that I highly recommend, because I think there's something that's going to speak to each person individually as well as the business concepts that are present in.
Awesome. I have not read Burn the Boats, but now I'm definitely going to check it out. So that sounds pretty cool. If you could go back in time and speak to baby Carl at his first real corporate job, right? You've only got 60 seconds. The time portal is closing. What do you shout through the hole before time is up? Other than buy Apple stock.
Live in the present. Live, cherish every moment. Don't chase the deals. When you live in the moment, when you have the right type of vibration and the way in which you're showing up as a human being, and you don't just put things off till the future, everything's going to work itself out. It's all going to happen in its own time. You don't control that. Instead, enjoy the journey, enjoy the adventure along the way. And by being present in the moment, don't be afraid to buy those things, take those risks. It's going to be okay, but don't put it off or don't put people off because you're trying to wait until you're in the ideal place to be able to do it.
That's good advice. I like that. Who do you love to talk to as a client, as somebody who you think I can really help this person? What do they look like?
That's a great question, Trevor. I love the visionary CEO who is able to take a look at the big picture, but also is able to work backwards to one foot at a time, one step at a time. I think it's very easy to become overwhelmed. I know with working out for myself, I'm on the do push-ups when do a few push-ups consistently as opposed to go to the gym and go crazy, right? So I think that consistency, I love working with people who are coachable, who are open, who are willing to even throw the conventions out the window and be open to what could be possible, and then we'll take action on it. Even if it's a small amount of action, that makes all the difference. And those that are willing to look past the P&L, et cetera, but to a compelling vision that it just becomes a value proposition that must happen, must occur. It's a win-win, and they're willing to think past the black swans, the uncertainty. They're not letting the fear stop them. They're literally thinking past that, and they're open to working with people to be able to get there as quick as possible. The creative versus the competitive, people focused, visionary. Those are the people I love to work with.
Awesome. Those are, I think, in general, good people to work with. It's hard these days if you're a hard driving, a hole competitive dude to make it too far in this world, at least in my experience.
I think with where the world's headed too, we're seeing more and more the importance of relationships, authentic relationships, not just because you work together at some company, but because someone actually knows you, someone's willing to step in and vouch for you. We're seeing that pick up a lot.
Yeah, definitely. So, if anybody who fits that description, right, visionary, a vision-focused CEO, and they go, Carl sounds like a guy who can help me with the problem, how do they find you? How do they get a hold of you, Carl?
Yes, if they go to my website, Renovatio Global, Renovatio global.com. And Renovatio is Latin for rebirth. So
There you go.
renovatioglobal.com. That's a great way to get a hold of me. And Carl, Karl, at renovatioglobal.com.
Awesome. Any social profiles you want to pimp? We didn't hear. I'll be dropping in the.
Yeah, LinkedIn. LinkedIn's great. LinkedIn's really what I primarily focus on right now.
Not a big TikTok guy?
Not yet.
Me neither. I looked at TikTok like 2 years ago and I went, ugh, I'm too old.
You want to know something ironic? One of my colleagues actually had meetings with the board over at TikTok and had approached one of my business partners and I and said, "Hey, this phenomenon TikTok is something you really need to take a look at." So we actually did start taking a look at those things, but again, those relationships and then just finding out, "Oh man,
Yeah.
had no idea."
Yeah. It's a thing, definitely, but it's also so many things to keep track of. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn pretty consistently, and then
Yeah.
Twitter every once in a while. YouTube starting up again. Hey, that's this podcast, right? It's a
Yeah.
lot. It's a lot, man. So you miss stuff all the time. That's okay. If you know the right people, you'll win anyway.
Exactly. And then what's the platform that speaks to you?
Yeah.
So I'm starting to do more with Instagram. I'm trying to get a little bit more comfortable with sharing those Instagrammable moments and whatnot. So I'm experimenting with that a little bit more.
I'm looking
I'm seeing
forward
that a lot of people resonate with that.
to see Duckface Carl. All right. I really
Yeah.
appreciate your time today. I think you dropped a lot of insight for founders who maybe either are thinking of partnerships or haven't thought of a partnership. Last thoughts, right? Let's wrap this up with a bow. What are we going to end the show on here today?
It's a great thing, Trevor. I think it's wonderful the stuff that you're doing with the founders because you're creating the story that's necessary for them to be able to succeed, right? You're giving them the tools that are necessary. And so the last thing I guess I'd like to leave here, perception equals reality, right? And in business, perception, the story has the ability to move markets. When I was in VC, I was wondering why certain companies that only had a story were receiving the capital and other ones that had the goods were being acquired by the companies that received the capital. But the story is really critical. And being able to back up that story, the way you're able to validate the different markets and the opportunity and make sure that they're actually going after, they're building for, or they're marketing to the right type of audience, I think is really critical. So that combined with the people side becomes an unstoppable equation. And when you've got $1 million revenue value proposition, $1 million machine, I've been speaking with people about that all the time. I'm like, listen, from software development into other types of areas, it's really, really powerful and not something that people should take for granted.
Cool. Thank you so much, Carl. I appreciate all of your time, all of your insight. Next
Thank you.
week, we will be on the show talking to the New York Times bestselling author of Rogue Waves and Forbes' #1 ranked futurist for 2023, Jonathan Brill. He'll be talking about how to make sure your business survives the AI revolution, the wave. It's coming for us. Rogue wave that's coming for us. Make sure to subscribe to the channel or follow on LinkedIn to be sure you don't miss it. Follow me, follow Carl, learn a whole bunch. Thanks, everybody.